There we go. So welcome everyone. My name is Olesia. I run a company called Home W.I.P, as in Home W.I.P, work in progress. And most of you are homeowners. So you know that the work at home never ends. It just evolves. My company actually empowers homeowners to add space to their homes. And the reason I'm running this series is that when I started digging into the whole new process with accessory dwelling units, I have found out that actually the process is pretty much the same on a small house as on a big house. And we had like 9 events before this one. This is kind of small anniversary, it's number 10. So today we are talking about the quality in construction. I've got 2 guests here for you today, as promised. One is an interior designer, and her name is Ida Ellis. And the second one is Edward Stevenson. He runs a company called Sonderpods, and that's, he's a builder. So, you know, those of you who have been to the events before, you know that I'm quite picky. And the reason that I asked Ida here today to kind of give us a context about how to look at the whole process of selecting a contractor, because I've done around 10 different projects for my own family. I have a very hard time picking an interior designer, but when I met Ida for the first time, she said something that really clicked. And Ida, you will correct me if I'm quoting you wrong, but I remember vividly your story about a person who wanted to change the whole kitchen. And then Ida digged in, and it turned out that there was only one cabinet that actually needed to be changed. And if you listen carefully to what I've just said, she might have cut herself out of a 50K project, but she did it anyway because it was in the best interest of the homeowner. Ida, can you kind of unmute yourself and...
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and please tell us how you treat the whole selecting contractors in your business and in general. Thank you.
Putting my volume up here. And thank you for your kind words. And yes, I did talk myself out of a project there, but ultimately it is all about the client and doing the right thing for them, which also extends to contractors. And I have worked on many, many projects. Now I actually insist on using contractors that I partner with, because over the years I have been on projects that have had good contractors, and I've been on projects where I've been really scared by what's being done by the contractors. In California, particularly, we have a lot of very strict building codes. And also we have a problem where we have, there are a lot of contractors who are kind of bidding low prices just to get the job. And unfortunately, also very unsuspecting homeowners who don't really know how to compare. So I think I would summarize into 5 main things. There's lots more than 5, but the 5 things that I have found to be a common theme is, one is to always check the contractor's license. A lot of the time, it's a human nature thing. They flash a license and we go, yeah, that's fine. Check it. And you check it on the CLSB site online. You can put their number in or the company name. If you know they're coming, put the company name in and try to find out a bit more about them. A lot of the time, I've worked on projects where I've the contractor's license actually belongs to his cousin or somebody else. And I would really, really strongly recommend or encourage that don't feel like you're being, I don't know.
Impolite. Well, politically incorrect.
Yes, definitely do that. You can get a lot of information about them online, and it's a very natural thing to do. And if they're a good contractor, they will have no objection to that. Hopefully Edward agrees. Um,
He'd better, otherwise I'll be in trouble.
The other thing is when a contractor comes into your home and they're looking around, it's always a good idea to observe the contractor in terms of what he's looking at or she's looking at. I've experienced contractors that would come in, they don't actually look at anything. They just sort of glance around, and because they want to do a quick review and all that sort of thing. A good contractor is going to be taking in the details and going to be listening to you, but also checking a couple of key things, because for them to be able to do a good job for you and quote for you, they need to understand and structurally what's going on. So they will be tapping on things and looking under things. I had one who crawled into the crawl space, which was great. So they will be looking around. So observe your contractor once he or she is actually going around. What I've always done, and I still do, and I apologize to all the females on the call and womankind in general, but I play the helpless woman card sometimes. And there's a number of very sort of simple building codes that need to be adhered to in California. And I pick, if it's a bathroom, I pick the toilet, because very often bathrooms, we're designing for space efficiency. And what happens is everybody wants to move the toilet and to hide it or whatever. But there is a minimum width that you can have. And I always throw that in as my sort of, well, what if we just push that against the wall? And if the builder says you can't do that because you need yada, 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 you're good. If the contractor says, oh yeah, we can do that, no problem, and end the interview right there, I would say, because that's an indication that they either don't know the code, which is scary, or even more scary is they are just trying to get the job. And if they're telling you about workarounds or what's the word again, the cutting corners, at this stage, they will be cutting corners wherever they go from there on. So that's another thing. And there are lots of little ones. If you're in the kitchen, you can also pick out a code. If you're in a
number of outlets and the square feet between them. Well, yeah. Not square feet, like linear feet.
But, yeah, so little things like that. The other thing that is interesting is once it comes to the question of pricing, and every homeowner is already thinking about that. We're very budget conscious for good reason. If your contractor doesn't have a design, or at least a general design in terms of what you're going to be doing, say it's as vague as, oh, I'm just going to be remodeling this, I'm going to rip this out and put a new one in. If your contractor at that stage is able to give you an estimate, you should be worried. A good contractor, Edward, will actually try to explain that they can't give you an estimate, not even a ballpark, because it can go so many different ways depending on what the design is. In a very sort of ironic way, homeowners seem to perceive contractors who are resistant that way as the bad ones, because they're like, why is he not giving me a price? You know, there's something dodgy here, where it's actually completely the opposite. I observed a client of mine, she wanted to bring a contractor in to talk about raising a floor. And there's a fireplace there. And I said, okay, well, let's see what he says. And he walked straight in, excuse me, walked straight in, looked at that, he says, do you want to raise that? Yeah, right, 10 grand, no problem. And I asked a question, like, what about the fireplace? And you should have seen the daggers he gave me. But it's that sort of thing. And she asked him a few other things, and I was just standing behind him going, no, just don't even go there, just end this now. It's a good contractor who wants to give you an accurate estimate as much as possible so that you have no surprises later on. So that's the reason behind that. So don't get worried or put off if a contractor is trying to avoid the pricing issue, or you perceive him as trying to avoid the pricing issue. Also on the note of pricing, one of the things I started doing for clients and then I stopped doing because it actually is a lot of work, and my clients, until I showed them what I was doing, didn't really appreciate what was going on there, is when you're comparing bids. If you have, say you have 3 bids and they're all like 3 different, you've given them the same spec, you've told them what you're doing, so the information going into them is the same.
So that's also an assumption.
That's also an assumption. Okay, it is an assumption. Assuming
Yeah,
this scenario.
Yeah, assuming this scenario, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what I do is whenever I send off a request for a quote or anything else, I send exactly the same information. That way there's no misinterpretation.
Yeah, that I will.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. When the quotes come back, they will come back in different formats. Every contract, every business has a different way of sort of putting these, but there is a general core structure where they will quote to you what the construction materials and labor is concerned. They will also put in there often allowances. Now, allowances is a section where they do add that to the quote or they keep it separate. And it's things that they can't really give a sense of because they vary so widely in price. For example, if you're doing a kitchen and your appliances, the contractor is not going to be able to tell whether you're going to be looking for a low budget appliance or you're going to go for high end. So those things kind of fall into the allowances. The problem is, if you take 2 contracts that, 2 quotes that have the allowance and the main body there, if a homeowner puts them side by side and just looks at the summary, the top level, the one that is lower is going to feel like a good way to go because sometimes they can be very different. But, and this is just one scenario, one part of this. If you look at the allowances, they have scaled down the allowances to something that is just completely unrealistic in order to get that number down. I would be very wary of that. I mean, I had a client who had a $5,000 estimate for a kitchen, a full kitchen all the kitchen cabinets in their allowances. And I said, that is actually impossible. And she said, oh, no, he gave us where to go. And I said, I know the place. And even with them, it's impossible. And they said, no, he was very sure. He's worked with them all the time. So I said, let's go visit them. So we did. And so talked to the guys there. And I said, we're looking to do all this for about $5,000. And I swear he nearly, I was sure he wanted to just kick us out the door. So it's things like that that kind of affect the overall price. The other thing to be careful of is if anybody's quoting per square foot. So it's saying it's going to be like approximately $150 per square foot. Square footage is a very subjective term. And, you know, it could mean the usable square footage, it could mean the footprint of the house. So again, you're not comparing apples and apples there. So you need to always be comparing apples and apples. And when you're going through the bid, labor and where labor is included versus where it's not, it's hard to explain in detail sort of the things to look out for there, but you're just looking for discrepancies or anything that's different. A lot of the time, I have a contractor bid that puts everything in there and reasonable allowances. It comes up to something like, I don't know, 115,000, let's say, for example. Actually, I had one recently. And the other contractor's bid was about 70,000. And my client said, well, this is a no-brainer. But when I went through, there are a lot of hidden costs sometimes. That doesn't include the material, or that doesn't include the electrician. He will have to give you a separate quote. That sort of thing is kind of what I hear. If you're looking at your general contractor, everything, even if he's got third party or subcontractors that he uses, everything should be in that quote. And then you know exactly what you're dealing with. So by the time we kind of poured through it and made the allowances realistic, the the $70,000 one came up to about 120. And
it remained a no-brainer.
It's just like, if you have to go through that exercise, in my opinion, if I have to go through that exercise to get the true cost, I don't want to work with that contractor. It's that simple for me. I need to be able to look at something and go, okay, this is, I mean, things change, things move around, but I need to be able to look at something and know nothing's hidden, at least nothing that they've intended to hide. And I'm working with numbers that are going to be reasonable when we start construction. So those are 5 things. There's more, but those are the biggest things I see happening.
And I have to say that I swear to God, she did not listen to previous 9 events. I know that there are people that were on the previous 9 events. She did not have time to watch the video recordings. So, and she just kind of confirmed everything that we've been talking since then. Thank you very much. Yeah, I told you, I love the way you work. So thank you very much. Thank you for taking this time.
Thank you.
I know that it's a bit of pressure now on Edward to talk about the quality, but I also know that he comes from a good place to talk about it. So I'm kind of good bridge. Thank you very much, Edham.
Thank you.
Edward, can I ask you to unmute now? And by the way, if you want to ask some questions, guys, the chat is open. You can ask them there. Yeah, and Edward, over to you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Olesia, for having me here. It's great to be here. I tell you what, if more people had people like Itan supporting them in their selections, like as far as just listening to that, it reminds me of some of the reasons why I founded Sonderpods in the first place. Like my background is actually technology and advertising. So what on earth am I doing in the construction space? Well, the actual idea of Sonderpods started because I have a young family and we were considering having an au pair come and live with us to look after the kids for the first couple of years. So I thought, well, we might build a little granny flat or a little outhouse for the au pair to come and stay to do it because we didn't have the space in the house. I went and spoke to contractors. I'm sure that I broke all sorts of rules that shared with us there. And I had quotes anywhere from, we were talking about something that was under 500 square feet, and I'm in Marin County, and the quotes that we were getting was anywhere from 260,000 at the low end through to 480,000 at the high end. And my brief was exactly the same across both. So as an individual, as a homeowner, that I don't have time to really investigate and dig into all of these things, I just ended up not doing the project because it was just there was too much risk, too much unknown. I couldn't really trust anyone, I felt like, when it came to it. So I think that the selection of the right contractor and being confident in that is so critically important. So I founded Sonderpods. We've been developing our products for about the last 2.5 years, and we just started to commercialize our operations around about the same time that shelter in place came into effect here in California, which we thought was going to be a problem, but we've actually found that it's quite the opposite as far as the explosion of the accessory dwelling unit space in the last 3 to 4 months has just been incredible. We had a fun moment. We were featured on the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle on July 4th, which was good fun as well. So, in that time, we've had over 1,000 inquiries about accessory dwelling units. We've got 120 projects now that are in different stages of review. We're not doing all of those projects, just to be clear, but the fact that there are 120 people just in that space a period of time that are seriously considering building an ADU, and we've currently got 12 projects underway, and this is all since the time that we started operating. So I think that the difference about Sonderpods and why we're seeing the success is that what I really felt when I looked at going through this process myself, one was that I ended up feeling like I needed to be the expert to be able to make a good selection when it came to it. I felt like I almost needed to train up on being a general contractor myself to be able to make these good decisions. And I just didn't feel confident about it whatsoever. So I felt that I needed to speak to someone that was going to do a lot of the thinking for me. That's someone that I could trust that would come in and say, okay, well, I've actually answered an awful lot of these questions already about what material should I use, where should I spend money, where should I save money, what are all of the legal ramifications of doing this, and how do I put it all together and complete the project without affecting my marriage and my stress levels and all of these sorts of things. So that's really the basis of how we founded the company. We spent a lot of time on identifying production processes materials that that are used, and trying to strike that perfect balance between the expense of a certain material and item versus the quality. So we joke about it internally that we're basically building a Subaru, which is, you know, it's not a BMW or a Mercedes, and it's not a secondhand old banger. It's just a good, solid, good quality, safe solution that can be delivered quickly, and it's something that you can rely upon. So, you know, we're off to a great start, and you know, we have capacity to build 200 of these units a year, and we're quickly ramping towards that. So our production facility is actually now up and fully running, and we are sold out until the end of September at the moment, and we're building one of these things a week. So it's been some pretty exciting times. But yeah, so that's really what we're up to at Sonderpods.
Yeah, but I also know that you're building in a particular style of construction, right? Construction method. So could you dig into that?
Yeah, this is another one of those areas where you almost need to be an expert in building to really identify the differences. And I don't think the code is very helpful at all when it comes to that. As far as if you just think about all of the words that you would have heard about when it comes to building an ADU. You hear words like manufactured homes, you hear prefabricated homes, you hear modular homes, you hear custom built stick homes, you hear about custom modular, you hear about tiny homes, you hear about mobile homes. There's all of these things, and you know, how you're supposed to be able to identify what the differences are between these things. It's really difficult, and I have a lot of sympathy for people that are trying to figure out the differences between these things. So it's something that we've done quite a bit of work on. So I thought it might be helpful to sort of explain some of the differences, because I think that if you can identify the sections of the code and generally, you know, start to align some of these different words with each section of the code, then that will allow you to be in better shape. So really, as far as we see it, there are four major ways of building, right? The first one is via a general contractor. So this is more what Ezhan was talking about, where a general contractor will come in and stick build the unit on your property. Then there are three other ways major ways of manufacturing or building homes, which is all certified by the California Department for Housing and Community Development, called the HCD. So the first one is there are mobile homes or park models or RVs or these sorts of things. Now, by definition, these are actually vehicles. So they're on wheels. You know, you see all sorts of cool things online as far as tiny homes and various other different bits and pieces, but it's very clear in the law about where you can and you cannot use these. So when it comes to something which is defined as a mobile home or an RV, and generally park models or tiny homes are generally there. Sometimes you do get tiny homes which are actually just homes that are small, but generally when we talk about tiny homes, they're on wheels. So therefore they're treated like a trailer or something similar to that. So it's very clear in the building code that you cannot permanently occupy a mobile home outside of a mobile home park. So if you're thinking about adding permanent structure to your home that you're planning on occupying permanently or renting out, that's just not an option for you. And you run the risk of the city inspecting and actually telling you to unoccupy that unit and to leave. So that's something where, you know, just be very careful about. Okay, well, if you're thinking about, you know, and these codes change from state to state. So we watch these really cool TV programs where it's like people are up in the middle of nowhere living in a tiny home which they spent $10,000 on, and we all think that's great. Just be aware that, you know, some of these things are not possible in California. The second category is manufactured homes, and you know, I will attempt to explain the difference between manufactured homes and factory-built homes, which is what Sonderpods does. It sounds very much the same, and this is where I'm saying that just the words that we're using are awful, and I think we need some new categories for each one of these things. So, because obviously a manufactured home and a factory-built home, they're both built in a factory, right? So it's not the best for changing the description from it. And also both of those are prefabricated. The actual production method is that you're prefabricating the modules and putting them together. So what is the difference between a manufactured home and a factory built home? Well, it's actually the devil's in the detail on these things, where the difference between a manufactured home and a factory built home is the codes that you have to adhere to when building those units. So a manufactured home typically has different requirements around foundations. They have different requirements around insulations and structural integrity and so forth. And, you know, and factory built housing, the real definition of that is that the building code that we have to adhere to with factory built housing is exactly the same code that you have to adhere to if you're custom building it or stick building a home. So the factory built housing is just the house built exactly like conventional housing is, but we just happen to do it in a factory. Manufactured homes are built in a factory, but they are built to a different code. So you will have different levels of safety and insulation and structural integrity compliance that you need to do. However, you can use a manufactured home as an accessory dwelling unit because they can go on a permanent foundation and so forth. So why is all of this important? Well, really when it comes down to how can you understand what is quality and what is not? Well, you know, it is a tough thing to figure out. And, you know, from our perspective, as far as, you know, we feel that the factory built housing code, the fact that we have to adhere to building to the same custom built code or the conventional housing code of something else, that provides security to customers to know they're making a safe choice around that. Where, so I think those are the sort of the three areas there, you know, the four main building categories, which is one is custom building with a GC. Typically it's at the higher end of costs, and you've got all of the issues of what Idan was talking about, where it's like, do I have a good GC or not? Then you've got factory built housing, which we're betting big on, which is obviously building to the same code, but being able to build at scale. So therefore, you know, we can produce a lot of these units at the same quality that a GC would be able to do, but we can manage everything end to end. So hopefully we take some of the worry out of whether or not you're selecting a good GC or not. And then you have manufactured homes, which, you know, at a certain price point, they may make sense. I think typically in the manufactured home world, there is a bit of the area there where, similar to what Idan was talking about, which is around, you know, be wary of the list price versus the complete price of installation. So typically with a manufactured home, the actual installation cost is more than doubles the cost of the actual existing structure. So within manufactured homes, be very careful about what the total cost is.
Total cost of construction is not just the cost of a unit. That's what we are driving.
Okay.
So you know, manufactured homes are bought much like you would buy a car or something along those lines. So therefore, you would probably drive past manufactured home parks down the freeway. You'll see advertisements where it's like 2 bedrooms from $49,995 or something like that. You go, wow, that's a great deal. But then the cost to actually transport and install that unit to your place, it might be another $50, $60, $70, or $80,000 to actually turn that simple structure, which is on the side of the road, into the unit that you're wanting to look at. So that is something to be wary of, where sometimes there's that, you know, there's the attractiveness of a price as it appears, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Yeah. So that's one of the advantages, making sure that you're working with someone that is actually looking at what does it take to deliver this project from concept through to actually you having the keys and being able to use it. That's a really critical component to be able to look at end to end.
And may I add one more kind of level of complications there? Something that people don't think about because they think, oh, this one I can put in quickly because it's on the wheels, I can just drag it in. That's where I and my kind of MBA hat comes on, and I go like, let's think about home equity. Whatever is on the wheels has the value the same way as a car. As soon as you took it out of the shop, the value drops down 30% by definition. And as soon as you put something on a proper foundation, basically whatever money you've put in, you gained in the property value. And then you just, especially if it's a rental unit or if it's something that your kids are using, etc., you just kind of use the benefits of it. So I think that's an important distinction. And again, it will be home on wheels on one side, manufactured somewhere in the middle, and then all the factory built and custom built homes will be on the kind of the better end of the home equity values. I think that's also important to think. We're actually working on something to make it more visual for the homeowners to understand. but it will be coming back in September. Thank you, Edward. But I think also, I know that you've taken a lot of time to look into what goes into a home. And apart from that, I also have a question. Are your units coming as modules, or do you do panels? Like which part of the construction method are you using?
Yeah, it's modules. So typically our units, they break in half for transportation. Obviously they are connected together with a solid seal on site, but typically we've designed our units around the ability to transport them without pilot vehicles and various other things, which just increases the cost. So the actual dimensions of the individual modules just happen to be actually similar sizes to what a shipping container would be. Our units are not shipping containers, they're built fundamentally differently to that. But the great thing about a shipping container is that you can just put them on a truck and drive them anywhere in the country, and that's similar to us. So that was part of our research process about how do we minimize the cost about being able to get these units to the property and get them installed. And we felt that was, and we have seen that is the most cost-effective approach to be able to do that. And then also, we're only on the property for about 4 days. So if you think about the disruption to your life and not wanting to turn your home into a construction project for the next 6 months, as far as because we're taking care of most of the building within our factory, where we'll actually only be on your property for 4 days. So, and that includes the landscaping, all of the utility preparation, and so forth. We've actually got a video on our website which explains our 4-day installation process. But yes, so most of our units come in 2 halves.
How big an access do you need for that unit to come through? Because sometimes we have backyards that, like trees grown, like neighbors suddenly deciding to build too close to the fence, whatever. Yeah.
Well, the good thing is there's generally a big gap right over the top of your house. So typically, yes, with some properties, if there is space down the side of the property, if there's about an 8-foot gap down the side of the property, then we can generally roll in things down the side. But more often than not, what we're actually doing is that, with our crane capabilities, that we can fly any one of these modules up to 150 feet away from the street. So therefore, that typically allows us to be able to go over even a 2-story house and into the backyard. So we typically drop them into the back unit using a 250 or 350 ton crane. It's quite a sight to see. So we'll be videoing the first few around that, but I think it'll be good fun to see us craning these 8,000-9,000 pound units up over 2-story buildings to get them into place behind. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. I had a project when I had to transport the historical studio from one spot on the property to a different one. So I know how that works with the trees, but it will be fun to watch how that works over the houses. So
we've got the drone ready.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. So what's the distance that the biggest distance that you can think of that you can kind of crane it over?
Yeah.
Number?
Typically 150 feet from the street where the crane is to the location, like that. That's typically good. But ultimately, cranes are incredible things. You can just get a bigger crane and they can go further. But obviously, when you get a bigger crane, the cost goes up. So, as we think about, because we want to be very clear about when does it no longer become viable to use someone like us, and you might as well just custom build it on the property. Once you're getting over 150 feet, then you'll be ending up spending so much on getting this massive crane, which would be a great day and a fun thing to see. But that's when, the cost benefit of working with someone like us might start to become comparable to having something which is stick built and so forth. And it might just end up being easier doing that. But, we're able to measure a property very easily to be able to and we actually pre-qualify properties for anyone that's interested. And that measurement from the road to the likely location is part of that. So we know within the first 12 hours or something about whether or not it's a feasible project and whether we would be a good fit for that project.
Okay, thank you. And kind of to hop on that one, because we have one of the questions that actually relates to it. What about the foundations, especially the ones on the slope? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so we drop onto, all of our foundations are engineered and certified. So typically our preferred method is that we're using what we call ground screws, which is actually the way that you would describe it is effectively if you imagine a screw which is between 5 and 8 feet long and about 5 inches in diameter, and we just sink these screws deep into the ground. As far as the structural integrity, seismic ratings and everything are very, very favorable on that. But that also allows us to deal with small variations in grade. So therefore, you know, if there's sort of 2 feet between one end and the other end of the unit, then it's just a matter of adjusting the level of how deep we're putting the screw into the ground. For steeper foundations, we can still absolutely work with them, but effectively what we're doing is that we're creating a platform which we then drop the unit onto. So that platform would be engineered separately. Again, we would construct that for you and put it in place for you. But again, you know, anything when it comes to a foundation is that it's fully engineered and certified and approved as part of the either under the HCD plan or we're doing it specifically for the property. Yeah.
Sorry, would you require a soils report to engineer something like that?
Sometimes if you're on a hillside, you're probably going to need a topo and you're probably going to need a soils report to be able to do that. As far as, you know, at the end of the day, we have to adhere with what an engineer says is required there. Typically on flatter land. So, you know, obviously the definition for a developer versus an individual about what is flat quite often changes, where if you know, you might think, oh, it's pretty much flat. We kind of know that there's probably 2 feet difference between one end and the other end, so therefore by definition it's not flat. But for flat properties, you know, we've designed a standard foundation which meets the criteria of like 95% of properties in California. So it's actually only a fairly small percentage that would not qualify under our standard foundation, and those ones are typically hillside. And if you need a hillside, you don't want to take chances there, and you know, doing a soils report and a topography report, and then also getting a fully engineered foundation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't want one of these things sliding down the hill into your existing home. That's for sure.
That's definitely, yeah. And actually, one more thing to kind of again connect to is all this flat, not flat. It also influences your septic thing, because it's better run in the right direction. You don't want it to run in the direction of the main home or of the ADU. You want it to run actually to the sewage line, right? So that also gives us a very good...
Yeah, gravity is our friend when it comes to that. Obviously, it can be dealt with elsewhere, but you know, like something as simple as gravity tends to make things a lot easier when it comes to waste disposal and so forth. So that is certainly part of it. Where going downhill is a lot easier than going uphill, so we don't have to deal with pumps and various other things like that.
No, I'm just saying that some people are wary of, you know, like reports in advance of the construction, while what we do, we actually encourage them to do both the survey and the soils report, because what happens is that you put in the permit for something that does not require a pump. Then when the inspector comes, he measures the level, and it turns out that you actually do need a pump. And that means you have to go back and get an update on the permit. And I don't have to tell you how long that might take in any city that I know around me here. So that's why it sounds like we are making you spend money in the beginning, but in the end, we're actually saving you money and saving you time as well. So that's just something that I wanted to park there for people to think about.
Yeah, the permit process is set up to be able to approve a permit that meets all the requirements. It's not kind of like this interactive thing where you can have a go at trying under one way and work with them to get it right. They're set up to be able to check boxes and say yes or no. And you want to be pretty confident that when you're submitting that permit that it's a yes, and that it's going to push through from there. So I fully agree that's not something, you know, being confident about the unit, you want to be confident yourself anyway that this solution is right for you. The only reason why they would say no is because they deem it would be unsafe, or that you're going to run into problems down the line. Like the reason why they would say that in your example that maybe you need a sewage pump or something like that, they're really actually protecting you, because they don't want your plumbing to block up or to have a burst sewage main, which is going to leak down your property. So they're annoying sometimes. I get that, but they, in a weird way, they are on your side also.
Yeah, in a way they are.
Financing in there, which I thought was interesting, as far as a couple of questions. One, which was like, how do most owners finance their ADUs? And then there's another question, which is it better to take out a home equity line of credit or do a cash out refi in order to fund the ADU? This is obviously, and it looks like solutions to finance an ADU is a popular question here, which is great. So, you know, I'm going to do one of those annoying answers at the for this around the different.
I know the answer. Like everybody tells me, yeah, you'll say it depends.
It depends. It depends. It's such an annoying answer. I know that. But to try and go one step forward than that, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a mortgage broker or anything out from that. But obviously, we have worked with a lot of people that are looking at these various things. Typically, at the moment, it seems that a refi is making an awful lot of sense. And I'll give you an example of that. So there was a customer that we're working with down in San Diego, and we were doing a 540 square foot ADU project for them. The total cost, including absolutely everything, permits, like the turnkey thing, was just under $150,000. And we put him in touch with our mortgage brokers, which is cross country. They've done a great job for us. And through the refi, they were actually able to take out the full purchase price of the ADU, refinance, and then their total overall mortgage payment actually went down by $70 a month. So obviously the way that happened is that they had managed to pay down their mortgage from when they had it before. So there was a change in interest rate. Also, it resets your 30 years as well. So what in effect, like, you know, depends which way you look at it, but did they just get a free ADU there? I'm not too sure. So they're in a great situation where their mortgage payment went down by $70 a month, and they've got quotes from real estate agents that they'd be able to get anywhere from $1,800 to $2,200 a month in rent, which, you know, from changing their lifestyle and things, it's a pretty important component. Where the home equity line of credit is a little different to that, because you obviously maintain your existing balance, and you really maintain your existing terms on the home equity line of credit. And then the amount that you borrow over and above that is on a variable rate. So therefore, if interest rates go up from, they're at a historical sort of all-time low at the moment, if it goes up, then you'll end up paying more in the future. So again, I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that. I'm just sort of, from my experience of what others have gone by, it just appears to me as a homeowner myself that, you know, the refi is probably more attractive at this time, but always consult a broker, all of those disclaimers on that as far as about being careful there.
And that's something else we're working on with brokers who can say those things, but also will have a lot of legal disclaimers. But I think the main reason why it depends and what it depends on is income, how much home equity you have, and it's basically, it's a scale. So the more income or the more home equity, the easier it is to get HELOCs and refinancing. If that's not the case, there are other instruments. And if you're interested, please kind of email me separately and we can discuss what these are. Because I know that there are construction loans that people use. There are different nonprofits that help people finance ADUs. I mean, there is a number of different options, including the new ones like profit participation agreements. So don't despair thinking that you cannot afford it. Please, like, you know, the website that I give, that detachedadu.com, it's actually, the scheduling link is directly to my email. So you will not be talking to anyone else. Feel free to call. And it's a pleasure to kind of guide you in the right direction, because that's what we are doing. Because it's painful for me to watch the outcry on social media that I don't know where I'm hosting my 89-year-old mother. By the way, talking about mothers, are your units age friendly?
So the ADA. So there, we've certainly designed the units with ADA requirements in mind. We haven't gone for our official certification of ADA around that. We are talking to a couple of consultants about what we would want to do. So we have done it with in mind, but, you know, just to be very clear, you know, our units are not assisted living facilities and so forth. And we do configure, you know, there's one project we're doing in San Jose where we are configuring an accessibility ramp and a couple of other things for customers. But I do want to be clear that, you know, we haven't designed the units in consultation with an ADA consultant, but we have certainly got features to keep that in mind. There's one other question there, if you don't mind, Olesia, which I think is really interesting, which is, so can we think, the question is, so can we think about factory built housing as having the benefits of a contractor built home in terms of safety and configurability, and the benefits of a manufactured home in terms of cost and modularity? I think this is a really important question. Now, I can't speak for all factory built housing companies, right? Because ultimately what this means, you know, you could technically build anything in the factory and add to that code and deliver it. So the reason, or how we leverage the factory built housing code at Sonderpods, is that we're looking to standardize design, right? So we have 4 units, which is ranging from a 360 square foot 1-bedroom through to a 750 square foot 2-bedroom. Now, we leverage factory built housing to be able to get those units to you in the fastest and the cheapest possible way while keeping quality as high as possible. If you wanted your own vision, right? If you wanted to have your own custom passion project and you wanted this built in a very particular way, we're not going to be able to help you too much there because we've got these 4 particular units. So I would say, you know, there are differences where factory built housing can deliver significant cost savings and so forth, but sometimes, depending on what the project is for you, if you're looking for a good, functional, well-designed, well-built ADU, then great. If it is more of a passion project where you've got a particular vision and you want to, you know, design it from the ground up with everything in mind, then you're going to struggle with someone like Sonderpods because we've just got these 4 ways of doing things. So there's benefits of doing each one of those. So I would say that certainly factory built housing versus manufactured housing, yes, you have the security that we have to build to the same code as a custom built home. You have that as security, and we typically deliver at costs below what a general contractor would. But what you're giving up on the other side is some of the flexibility, which, you know, obviously we believe that for a lot of customers, that's an easy trade to make because they tend to like our designs. But I would say that that would be one of those considerations. So if it is a passion project, if you've got a very specific thing in mind, then maybe a contract is the way to go. If you're looking for more of a functional, solid space that's going to work for a particular use case, then, you know, we believe the factory built housing and the way that we're doing it's a very compelling offer.
Yeah. One question about your units. Are you planning to add on bigger sizes, or are you good for now? Because I can tell you why I'm asking. Like I literally have a project where we are looking at something around 1,000. And I cannot explain why, because we need to host 2 adult kids with families. So we need a bigger size. So what are your plans there?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the great thing about the ADU code is that it's getting easier and easier to do that. Like the change from, you know, the 5-foot setback at the side and 15 at the back to 4 feet is a game changer as far as the number of properties that can get an ADU. And then also, typically you can go up to 1,200 square feet for an ADU as well. So, you know, we want to develop a Sonderpod which just sneaks it just in under the 1,200 square foot limit. So the way we're going to do it is that we've actually, I've got the drawings. I wish I could share them with you because they are super cool. But ultimately what they are is that they are 6-foot wide little corridors that you can connect 2 units together. So probably at the beginning of next year, you'll be able to take one of our 540 square foot units and attach it to a 430 and really create, you know, I don't know if people are aware of sort of breezeway houses as far as the connected sections between the units. We're looking at 2 ways of doing that. One is having solid sections that can connect 2 units together. The other one, which I love, you know, obviously I'm outside here, I love the indoor-outdoor living, is the ability to actually have these connection points to be breezeways between the units of the house. And especially in California, our ability to, you know, let's take advantage of this great environment that we're in. You know, and through intelligent use of decking and breezeways in covered areas, and then also the ability to open up certain areas, to be able to take advantage of that indoor-outdoor lifestyle, because that's a great way to add square footage and the feeling of space to a small unit like an ADU. So I would say not our biggest right now is 750. Keep an eye on sort of February time. I think we're going to have some exciting announcements there that which will allow you to configure these units together in ways like this, but also we've got a couple of other things cooking that that will actually give you some more configurability as well. We manufacture in Riverside, California, just in LA County. So there's like around about a 30,000 square foot place that we have there. We have 3 building bays, so we build 3 of these things at a time. It takes 3 weeks to build a unit, so we complete 1 a week. So if you think about it, a production line there. Transportation, yes, to a certain extent, it does change. Like the cost of transportation to move something from there to Northern California versus Southern California is slightly different, but when it comes to the total cost of the project, it's like a 2% variance. So it's not a significant change. And then also, like the crane companies that we work with are local to the installation of where we're doing it. So that's a very it's a good question. Yes, there is a slight variation in it, but certainly if you live in Riverside or Anaheim, then your transportation costs are going to be less than if you're in Napa. But it's not material in the change. Then about permits, it's a really good question. So there are certain protections which are statewide. So obviously there's the state level legislation around ADUs, which ultimately sets that cities have to adhere to a certain level. And I'm probably speaking to folks that already know this back to front, so please excuse me for covering ground that you guys already know. But there are certain protections in place already at the state level that the local authorities have to adhere to. So simple things like if the property meets the state level requirements, then the city has to approve within 60 days. If the unit is under 750 square feet, then you cannot charge an impact fee. There's numerous things that are on top of that, but there are areas where the city still does have some jurisdiction to do it. And then the second thing is that they do have the right to be less onerous than what the state level is. So yes, there are elements, I would say that probably 80% of things are uniform across the entire state. And I would say that there are 20% of those variables to look at. So even though we haven't submitted and got a permit in every single city or county around the state, we've done enough to know that there's really only 20% of the things that change. So we just have to zip in to identify a few areas, which is mainly the areas that you need to look at is the ratio between the size of the primary dwelling and the size of the ADU. There's some variation there. There's some variation around lot coverage. And there's like 3 or 4 things like that, where we just know that everything else is going to be the same, and we just need to hone in on these 2 to 3 things. As far as we are confident in our permitting process for any city to be able to do that, because we know that that's ultimately there. We are experts at the state level, enough to the point of so we know what to look for at the city and county level. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Yes, it does. Thanks.
Yeah.
Cool.
And another thing to keep in mind is that some towns are very revolutionary in their approach to ADU, and they are allowing the pre-approved plans where the builder like Edward can come in, tell them that that's what we usually build, and just have it as a very quick permitting process. But not every town is like this. So that's why the builders who get covered by the California, kind of on the California level, on the state level, they get an easier job pushing the permits through.
And the costs change significantly as well. To give you an example, that in Novato, where I am here, it's about $785 for the permit, and in San Jose it's $6,000. So the most that we've seen is the $6,000 for San Jose, and we've seen quite a few of those now. But and then on the other side of things is that Novato would be sort of around there. So it's generally, we'd be surprised if it's more than $1,500 or something like that in total city fees around that. And then obviously the other thing you need to look at is the utility connection fees, which can change a little bit as well. So PG&E tends to be pretty uniform everywhere. The water connections, they're still up and down all over the place, but generally we're seeing water boards passing more and more updates to their ordinance. Like, for example, Marin Water just recently abolished the connection fees for detached ADUs. So we're seeing everything's moving in the right direction for sure. And I think the new legislation is helping a lot in that way.
And also something else to think about, if you are still in the research mode for the ADU, but have the ability to do like phase one of your project, one of the things that I encourage people to think about, and this actually ties in nicely to what I've just posted in the chat, think solar. Because while you're figuring out which way to go, which builder to pick, the tax refunds are getting smaller, and you will still need to upgrade most probably your panel for the ADU. So by doing it now, you are also speeding up your ADU installation process because you're already in line kind of with PG&E on their schedule. So you're moving on while you're doing the research. Am I making sense? Yeah, hopefully.
I think you are. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm just making, because sometimes I'm so excited that I'm, bundling my words together. So I just want to make sure, because it's kind of important, and that's why I'm starting, and people think that I'm starting from the end, but starting from the end vision of your project actually helps you move faster. And that's also to answer one of the questions above is, do I need an interior designer? It depends, because if you already have an architect, you have to look into what the architect is covering inside their scope of work. Because some architects can do interior design as well, and some architects just do the architectural drawings and that's it. So depending on what sort of agreement you have with your architect, that will determine the answer to your question whether you need one or not. And yeah. Let me see if there are any other. Yeah, now we've posted twice your company website.
That's not a bad thing.
No, not a bad thing at all. It's just that it's funny. Anyway, so that's why we're encouraging you to think solar, to get scheduled to start rolling the ball with the PG&E, and that will just speed up everything in the end.